This is Healthcare Now Radio's Talking the Walk. Come along with us as host Tom Testa and his guests discuss the strides being made toward actionable changes in the industry. It's a fast-paced 30 minutes, so keep up. And now, here's Tom Testa.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking the Walk. I'm your host, Tom Testa. This show is all about diving into real conversations that inspire, challenge, and move us forward. No shortcuts, just authentic journeys. Joining me today is Jim Jacobs. He's the president and CEO for MediQuant. MediQuant's a leading provider of enterprise data archive solutions that is transforming the way hospitals and health systems engage with their legacy data. The company's flagship product, DataArc, allows health systems to maintain access to relevant clinical, financial, and administrative data, ensuring that valuable data required for patient care and compliance is within reach. Jim, welcome to Talking the Walk.
Hi, Tom. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and congratulations to you on your new podcast series.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. Yeah, and that's why I'm excited to have you here as one of my first guests. Really looking forward to this conversation. So, Jim, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, even your journey to how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. Be happy to. I've been in healthcare IT for over 30 years now. I've always been on the software and technology side of the industry, primarily focused on serving providers. I've been super fortunate to work with some amazing people throughout the years, built some phenomenal relationships. And that matters to how I got to MediQuant, because I was actually a customer of MediQuant's for a number of years, and they were an amazing partner. So I just stayed in touch with the team, the CEO, the founder of MediQuant at the time. He and I just hit it off, and just at one point in 2016, joined the team, and it's been an amazing journey ever since. We've seen tremendous growth in our business and the areas in which we serve. And we're very excited about the future, especially some of the new technologies coming to bear, AI, ML, a lot of industry change. So very excited about what the future has in store.
That's great. Yeah, no, and we're going to get into some of that stuff during our interview. So actually, why don't we dive right in? And let's first talk about some of the regulatory changes, right? We're going to see some changes happening in 2025. What are some of the key updates we can expect? And what do you see as the biggest compliance challenges for healthcare organizations in the year ahead, especially in light of financial pressures and cybersecurity risks?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately for providers, the pressure just seems to go up every year. We can talk about what's known and what's not known. The not known has to do with what is the new administration going to do. They've hinted at certain types of deregulation in certain areas. They've talked about changing some regulations. So we're all going to need to pay a lot of attention to any pending changes, especially any activities that come from the office of the president that would be immediately actionable. So we're all on watch for what's to come from that area. Then there's the area of what's known. And what we have there is the 21st Century Cures Act, the HTI 1 final rule, and US CDI version 3. These regulations need to be monitored because they're going to become enforceable if they're not already. So information blocking, where CIOs can be held accountable for making sure data is available for patients. There's a lot of standards out there now that the government is pushing to really start to enforce. So providers need to be very cautious and aware to make sure their tech stack, the solutions they have, all comply. Cyber risk just seems to get worse every year. So continued investment in these areas is going to be key for the hospital systems to remain compliant and to be successful. The unfortunate part of the cyber risk, the threats, is a breach, a failure. The consequences are steep. And so providers have got to stay vigilant. We've seen huge advancements. One of the new things I thought was interesting that came out in December, I believe, is proposed new HIPAA security rules. We'll have to see how that unfolds. I'm always interested in what and how does it actually show up. But I think if you look at the HIPAA journal recently, they cited a 102% increase in large data breaches over the past 5 years, which is just awful. We all saw what happened this past year and in the previous year with a large software services provider, transaction provider. As of November 20th or 30th, 2024, more than 180 million individuals had their personal PII information or PHI, either one or both, exposed in large health data breaches. So it's really a problem that's in the forefront, and it just gets in the way of actually running the operations of the hospital systems. But it's something that has to be managed to and solutioned around for all the providers.
And I want to just back up for a second. You talked about CIOs being held accountable, more accountable potentially the year ahead. Do you see more enforcement taking place? There was talk about it last year when it came to data sharing being available to patients. Are we going to see more of that in the year ahead?
We're expecting it. I have not personally seen a big rise in it, but I think that if I were a CIO these days, I would want to be in front of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you think you've got a large inventory of older systems, they may not support US CDI version 3. They may not support information blocking. There's a whole list of issues you need to think about. So I would want to be in front of that so that I don't even have to worry about whether or not they're enforcing, because I'm always in compliance.
Right, right. No, that's a good point. I want to follow up. You talked a bit about the leadership changes that could happen, especially at CMS and HHS, how they're going to influence the regulatory environment. How can organizations, the hospitals and health systems you work with, how can they prepare for those changes that are coming ahead?
Yeah, it's a difficult balance because you're trying to read the tea leaves. You're trying to make sure you're in front of things. There has to be, first off, assignment of responsibility for someone within the facility systems to actually keep up with the change so they know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Because there may need to be a tiger team that gets formed very quickly to react to changes that may come down. I think it obviously varies widely with what the changes are specifically, but in general, what I would do as a provider is be very, very up to speed on what the changes might be,
Mm-hmm.
and then have a quick ability to assess how ready or in compliance are we as a provider group, as an institution, and then if not, what is a remediation plan? So I would already have what I call the infrastructure in place,
Mm-hmm.
be ready, because some of these changes may require a quick turnaround.
And do you think, so you say they're having an infrastructure in place. Do you see the need for expansion of budgets or teams as well to move forward with these changes?
There will need to be a placeholder in a budget, absolutely, to be flexible for some of these things, because we've seen in the past times regulations come up and they're enforceable and they're not optional. And so the hospital systems, the providers, they have to react. So we definitely need to be ready within a budget and have places in the budget where if you have to start spending money on these types of issues, you need to know where the money is coming out of in other places of the budget.
That makes sense. You touched a bit about cybersecurity. It's going to be a huge factor, obviously, in the year ahead. You mentioned the large breach you hinted at the large breach we saw last year, and we're kind of nearing the 1 year mark on that one. But with cybersecurity remaining a top priority for hospitals, how can organizations effectively balance the need for increased investment with their strategic goal of spending smarter, right? Because we still have to spend that money smart. I mean, I've seen reports that although, budgets are loosening up a bit, if they're not as razor thin as they may have been. So particularly in the area of like gap analysis and application rationalization, how can they effectively balance the need for increased investment?
Yeah, it's a great question. How does someone find balance? I think that one of the
Right.
key concepts is to figure out ways to make room, right? And I mean, make room in the budget. So where are there places to actually save money, like a hard ROI, where you literally could remove cost? And that's part of the industry that we supply or provide into, is because with app rationalization, part of the intention is to figure out what applications are duplicates, what applications are older that we don't need, where are some areas where if we could save the data but get rid of the system and stop paying maintenance, we could actually save money. We could literally, there's a hard ROI attached to that. So the idea is you actually make room in your budget. Now, if you have extra room in the budget, as you mentioned, some trends are showing, that's even better. But the idea is to spend smartly and free up resources. The other is you want to reduce risk, because you may have, I can imagine, maybe there's an older computer system that you have in a hospital system, say, and they stopped paying maintenance on it a number of years ago. So there's a likelihood that they don't have the latest security patches. And that's a problem. So what you want to make sure that you do is actually get rid of those systems and maintain the data, because you need the data, may need the data for information blocking or for supporting compliance regulations, things like that. But literally turn off the old systems and use something like application rationalization, where the idea is you can sort through the inventory, you can take a look at what you have, you can look at multiple dynamics of what your decision making might be, because it might be security risk, compliance risk. It might be a large expense that you have annually. It could be all three of those. And what's nice about taking a programmatic approach is then you're making fact-based decisions on which systems to prioritize, which systems to get rid of. There are many CIOs who face an uphill battle with getting rid of older systems because there are user groups that want to keep them. They've liked the system, or there's something about the system that they want to maintain or hold on to. And using application rationalization as a fact-based approach to sunset systems or get rid of it actually makes the actual moving forward and realizing the gains and lowering risk a much easier endeavor. So we're seeing a lot of change where people are going live with Epic, people are going live with Cerner, whatever the case may be, and they just wanted to only sunset the previous EHR, and now they're looking much further and broader to say, what else could we do to save money? Because again, back to what's going to change, what are the regulatory pieces coming forward? What if the margins don't turn out to be like they're forecasted? The hospitals have got to be ready. And it's also just a good protocol to make sure your technology footprint is as small as it needs to be. That's exposure points. You want to make sure that you've got the least amount of technology that's required to run the operation and not have a bunch of older systems still up and running.
And, certainly I think a lot of folks don't want to hear that, budget spend on cyber will obviously decrease, but do you see the need to increase across the board on the cyber front? Do you see cyber budgets, whether it's for accreditation, new technologies, AI advancements, anything like that? Do you see impacting cyber budgets specifically?
Definitely. I can just tell you, as a service provider, our budget goes up every year. And there's really sort of two themes that we see where investment's needed. And one is in just training, just making sure everyone understands what the risks are, the type of risks. There are many examples where the breach took place because of someone clicking on a bad link, or someone falling for a phishing attack, or social engineering type of attack. It's amazing to me how many text messages I get that just sound real, but they're from an unknown number, and there's some urgent call to action, and we need you to click here, and it's an American Express issue, and it's an emergency. And so training users relentlessly is going to, I think that expense is going to continue to go up. And I think also just general tech spend on protecting the environment. And that's an area that's going to be interesting for AI, because we believe the bad actors are using AI to generate more and more sophisticated attacks. I think the AI can then be used to counteract that at the same. I think we're at the beginning stages of AI being used to counteract cyber, but I would expect that to be part of the advancements in AI overall, is not just inside the four walls of helping the hospitals run better, but actually will be used to help protect the providers and the systems that they are stewards of.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we're going to get into more of your thoughts on AI in a little bit. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Talking the Walk on Healthcare Now Radio. I'm Tom Testa, and joining me today is Jim Jacobs of MediQuant. Jim, getting back to the cybersecurity topic again here, staying with it. How about I want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of collaboration between CIOs, CISOs, and other executives in the C-suite. What practical steps can leadership teams take to ensure outdated applications, and you touched upon this a little bit, and unpatched systems are addressed proactively, especially during mergers and acquisitions?
Yeah, that's another great question around the dynamics of the industry. Mergers, acquisitions, even divestitures change every year. What we find is the CIOs, CISOs, all of the teams that are on the tech stack side are in great position to collaborate with the other executives, because there's a shared goal of protecting the environments. There's a shared goal of saving money. The CIOs often are on the hook for the compliance and security risks that are in front of them. But CFOs obviously are looking to make sure they're maximizing margins and saving wherever possible. And so app rationalization is one of those tools that helps bridge the communication between all the constituents because it actually can show how best to manage the environments. When you think about outdated systems, it's just get rid of them as fast and as swiftly as possible, helps reduce risk overall. As far as mergers and acquisitions go, imagine a situation where a large hospital system wants to buy an individual hospital. They could download the inventory of the tech's footprint, figure out what's in the four walls right now, and they could start building plans and funding the plans to manage transitions instead of just bring it all over as is and figure out what to do with it later. Be proactive about things, get in front of it, because then the CFO could actually budget for or work with the CIOs and CISOs to budget for what is the risk they're taking. Are they already inheriting compliance problems? Understanding and knowing what you're getting into becomes more and more important because then you can build into your acquisition cost what is you're going to have to do with the tech footprint. And we find that the conversations get much broader instead of just focusing on the one or two very large applications that are in the hospital system that's being acquired. They can actually reach out to all the ancillary systems. If there's provider touch, actually an ambulatory side or surgery centers, the CIOs can think holistically from an enterprise approach. I think that benefits the hospital systems all the way around because now the CIOs aren't just being handed a bunch of projects to go tackle. These are actually strategic decisions that get made. The other dynamic that we find is interesting is that data is being viewed more and more as an asset within these hospital systems. So they're looking at preserving data. This will feed into an AI conversation, but we believe that the long tail data has value. We believe that there's a tremendous benefit to keeping the data, maintaining it within a compliance framework, making sure it's in a secure framework. But in order to do that, there has to be good collaboration because the CISO is trying to protect from a cyber security access standpoint. There are compliance officers who are trying to figure out, what is our data retention roadmap? How do we actually manage to the data? So everyone's got a say in what happens, and the collaboration going up and using data, especially from app rationalization, really helps the conversation because now we're talking about a shared vision and balancing the needs of each of the constituents. So we've seen some really positive outcomes from those type approaches.
Do you see the M&A situation continuing to grow? Do you see an expansion in the year ahead? What are your thoughts on that?
I think this year we'll have a healthy amount of M&A. It ebbs and flows. What's interesting is, I joke that, a few years ago, maybe even a little bit longer than that, people were surmising that the large systems would tap out around 3 or 4 billion. And we've blown through that, obviously. And then you'll get certain years where there's not much M&A, and then the next year it picks up. We also see divestitures. So you'll see hospitals shedding certain assets that they don't want to keep for whatever reason. So yes, that M&A and divestiture swirl continues. We think 2025 will have more of it than 2024. We'll see how that really works out. But when you start thinking about the large merging actually with largers, that even keeps it more interesting because then you've got huge systems merging with extremely large systems. And so the footprint, the tech stack, the compliance risk, all that is just amplified across the board.
So you see an increase in M&A or divestitures. New administration, you don't see that as impacting in a way where people may say, well, it's a take a wait and see approach, or that has no effect on the market in that respect?
I think it'll be a little bit of both, but I think that for much of the M&A activity, the activity is already underway. So I would not expect an immediate chill effect from the administration. Now, the administration comes out with some strong and high impact regs that certainly could put a chill over the industry. But I would expect, I would have thought if interest rates had stayed super high, or inflation, if that'll, I believe, will have a higher impact on the velocity of M&A more than the administration, but certainly we'll see as it unfolds.
Well, I want to get into the AI topic with you in our last part of the show here. It's a huge topic. It's one that everyone's been discussing. We'll continue to discuss. Before we get into the impact on adoption, I want to just get your thought on this, Jim. Where do you think regulations stand on AI? Do you think we're going to see it a more firm regulation in place for AI adoption in 2025?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a technology that has outpaced almost everyone.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, I bet, in the regulatory bodies that still don't even know what the impact or the influence of AI is going to be. So there is a catch up that's taking place, which is through evangelizing, educating. There's still people who are figuring out what are the use cases in the first place. Those type of questions being answered will help then inform what the regulation changes might be. For example, some of the large language models or some of even the AI and ML engines that are out there want public data into one large in the cloud engine. And that obviously is a non-starter if you're talking about patient data, you're talking about privacy rules, HIPAA rules. So there is a set of circumstances of how do you actually create these models and do it in a way that doesn't already violate existing regulations and policies, much less new regulations that are come out. I think also there'll be some refinement on the regulations to speak specifically to AI and data use and data rights and where you can send it and where you can't send it. That would be my guess as to the first sort of phase of regulations that come out.
Well, even with regulations looming, providers are still moving ahead with AI and the use of AI. So let's talk about on the non-clinical workflow side. This is where a lot of healthcare organizations are really adopting it. What strategies should these organizations prioritize to ensure that AI integration delivers both measurable value, such as improved productivity and financial performance, without overpromising its capabilities, which seems really hard at this stage in the game?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that is one of the biggest challenges, which is does the promise match the results, right? The hospitals don't have a time for a lot of experiments or failed projects. So buying the right products, getting the right solutions. That's why I think many organizations will start more on the what I'll call just pedestrian type of applications, but they're ones that are rich and actually help hospital systems get work done. So if you think about productivity solutions or things that are help hospital employees prioritize work or maximize the opportunity or their work lists, things like that, that becomes interesting. And I think the risk to those not working is lower, right? You could probably figure out if something's not going to work more quickly and it's not involving patient care immediately. It is on the operational side of the hospital. So the exposure and risk might be lower in general. But I would encourage hospitals just to get on the journey, find, maybe talk to peers, find out from others, what's working, what's not. But they're going to have real strong reviews, making sure that the filters that they use to understand the applications. The other is making sure the hospital systems understand what is the use case they're trying to solve for. Do they really need this particular solution? We get asked all the time about, what are we doing around AI? And the questions usually start at this, huge pie in the sky solving all things patient care. And yet there's an argument to be had of what if you could help hospital employees get to more and more focused, do more with less. There's direct cost improvement, cost savings, and you're not hiring. You're not having to hire your way out of some of these problems they're in. I think hospitals could actually improve margins through some of these AI applications that are coming on board that are, like you said, workflow or other measurable capabilities. And they're not as exciting as some of the journal articles that you'll see, but they're also real and they make a difference for the hospitals.
And like you said, this is something that could be added to responsibilities to existing personnel, not new hires specifically, just working through an AI platform.
Yeah, for sure. I think some of the AI promises might be reductions in staff and things, but I look at it the other way, which is if you think about a use case around denial management or use cases around just getting people in the administration offices within hospital systems, what if they could actually get to more work? Then you're actually you're not laying people off, you're actually doing more, which is actually a better way to be more profitable than just cutting cost. There's always a limit to how much cost you can cut. But if you're helping employees do more, that helps with employee morale. It helps with actual top line and bottom line issues potentially. So I think there's a lot of exciting promise. What I would challenge the framework of the lens that people use is, what is it they're trying to solve, right? If you could help your hospital employees, if you could help even the clinicians, spend more time on patient care and less time on administrivia, I can't imagine them being anything but elated.
Now, let's talk clinical side here now. A lot of stuff is also being used on the clinical side, early stages for predictive analytics and disease management. That's great. Same thing. How can organizations best prepare their hospital, their health system to implement AI on the clinical use side?
Yeah, sure. And I, by way of background, worked on a computer system a long time ago that was helping with at-risk pregnancies and early detection of issues and things. I think there's some, helping clinicians with workflow, workloads. Imagine a provider that's going to get ready for their rounds, and the AI engines are helping them actually look for clues or potential problems. I think that stuff is much more of a near-term type of thing. Trying to predict early warnings of remitting, relapsing MS, really understanding causes of Alzheimer's disease states, or even for patients that are in a bed right now, predicting the likelihood they'll wind up with sepsis. I think those are further out. They're extremely interesting, and there's a lot of work being done. But again, it goes back to pick your use cases. How do you help the clinicians now with what they're facing, because they've got high workloads? Patient populations are changing, the demographics. If it's an ally, an adjunct, something that's helping clinicians do their work better, I think there's a lot of promise there. The bigger, more heady type of projects are coming, but I think they're further away. Again, I've been surprised by some of the AI advancements, so I'm also anxiously and eagerly waiting what the future holds.
That's great. Yeah, no, it sounds like, from what you're saying too, clinicians are willing to embrace AI technology, even those who may not now. They're probably folks that can see the benefit of it.
Yeah, no question.
Excellent. Well, Jim, this has been an excellent conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your insights you shared with us today.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too, Jim. If you'd like more information on MediQuant or are interested in connecting with Jim, please visit their website at MediQuant.com. Thanks for joining us today on Talking the Walk. Tune in to hear us weekdays at 8:30 a.m., 4:30 p.m., and 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can also find all our episodes on the Talking the Walk program page on healthcarenowradio.com. If you're someone who is walking the talk, we want to talk to you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or by filling out the show's contact form on healthcarenowradio.com. Until next time, keep walking your talk. I'm Tom Testa. Take care, everyone.